Hello everybody out there, this is JD. I am the designer of the device you see here in front of you, the LightPainters palette. I wanted to go ahead and put a video together that describes how to assemble the whole LightPainters palette and all the extra little bits and pieces you're going to need to get it fully up and running, and the different programs in its software, its different modes of operation. What you see in front of you is the item I have for sale on Tindy.com. It's the Light Painters palette. It also comes with 2 sets of straight pin headers and 1 set of curved pin headers. What you're going to need to get this thing up and running is a Arduino Pro Mini, a FTDI Basic. This is a board that programs those Arduino Pro Minis, a USB cable to plug it into the computer, some power of some sort, either something like a 9-volt battery connector, or you can find some AA or AAA kind of battery connections. The Arduino Pro Mini can either run from a regulated 5-volt source, so like a spliced USB cable or something that has a regulated 5-volt line, or it has a raw input that can go anywhere from 6 to I believe 12 volts, maybe 13. On the board here, I've got a couple different spots where I've broken the power inputs out. So you've got basically 1, 2, 3 different ones for the raw input, in case you want to plug in a 9-volt and then plug in a male pin header and have a couple different options on how to power your project. And then one that's the regulated 5-volt input. Got to be careful with that one. It's on the far corner, and it's one that you don't want to accidentally put too high of a voltage across, or you might burn out your Arduino. Another nice option, if you're going to be using this for a long duration or a high frequency, or just going to be using it a lot, is a rechargeable, option. This is a LiPo battery with a power cell from SparkFun. It also has a power switch, just that little single pole, double throw kind of switch. It's nice because it controls all the voltage regulation and voltage boosting to power any 5-volt kind of project. So this guy you can connect straight into the 5-volt input and charge it off a USB and have a really efficient way to run your project. An optional accessory that I highly recommend but isn't necessary would be a infrared receiver or remote control receiver. These little guys I got on TAYDA or Tata Electronics.com, and they're super easy and user friendly. And then a remote control. This one I got off Amazon.com. It's nice. It comes with a RGB LED, and it has a little panel of colors to pick from, and then a few different modes to pick from, and brightening and dimming buttons, and on and off buttons, and all sorts of nice options there. So let me go ahead and jump in how to assemble the whole guy. First thing I'd recommend doing is soldering in your power connection. That's because if you want to use it and solder it into one of these 2 headers that's underneath where the Arduino goes, you'll need to solder those in first. And then I'd recommend soldering the programming little header on the Arduino. That's just because these all solder from the bottom side and they're hard to access once you've got it assembled into the board. And then I typically take the straight pin headers and put them on and assemble it with the Arduino Pro Mini, and then kind of solder it all together as one big unit, just to make sure I don't have any pin headers that are slightly out of alignment, and make sure that all my holes line up. I usually go, put it all together and then solder the 4 corners, maybe solder the 4 corners on the top too, and just make sure that I've got everything nice and parallel. I've soldered these up before and had one of my pin headers not straight and just about ruined my day, so not suggested. And then with the IR receiver, I've got 1 set of these breakout pins, the D12 input, that has the data pin on the far left. It's got 5 volts on the far right and the ground in the center, and this matches what the IR receiver is. It's not the same as like some servos and some sensors where the ground is on the far right, 5 volts in the center, and the digital input's on the far left. So I made sure to wire this D12, or designed this D12 to be compatible with one of these, and that's also how it's set up in the software, so that's a good place for it. I do recommend giving it a little bit of space between the board. If you solder it all the way down here, it's not going to be able to be too mobile, and the remote control is going to have to, it's not going to be able to catch the signal from the remote control from a whole bunch of different angles. If you solder it up a little higher, you can kind of bend it to the direction you want it to be pointing. And when all is said and done, you're going to end up with something like this. This is a fully up and operational, fully all together kind of light painter's palette. I've bent the IR receiver down flat, and that seems to be able to work pretty well with the remote control. I've also covered the 9-volt battery with tape. That way it doesn't make any random connections or short out any of the LEDs with its metal case. And then I usually just attach it with a rubber band just to keep it simple. Now I'm going to go ahead and jump into the different modes of operation. The first one, and probably the most important, is when all these slide switches are at the bottom. This is like your color selecting mode. So once you've got all the switches down there, you can rotate this left knob and it'll go between all the different colors. You got red, red and green, green, green and blue, blue, blue and red, or all of the above. So go ahead and select a couple different colors you're looking to use in your photo or whatever your project might entail that has a bunch of colorful lights. And then if you flip the one up, it fades between those two colors at a speed proportional to the right knob. So you can kind of speed it up and slow it down. And how this one works is it fades from green to blue to green to blue to green to blue. If you just push up the second one, it goes from green to black to blue to black to green to black to blue to black. So kind of makes a dotted line in a light painting environment, or just gives you a little more distinct colors. And then if you flip the third one up, it does green and blue to black to green and blue to black. It usually has to make it through a whole cycle of whatever color you're doing before it's going to change its speed. So you got to kind of wait for it to finish off its little sub-program. But anyway, this one does the combined color to black at a speed proportional to this left knob. If you do 2 and 3 up, it's going to go with the color you pick and then white in between. So green and blue to white to green and blue to white. And then if you do 1 and 2 up, this is your remote control receiver kind of function. This is where it's waiting for codes from your remote. So you've got red and green and blue, purple, teal, yellow, off, on, white. It's got dimmer and brighter functions. And then a flashing function. This one also works with at least the Nikon remote shutter release, at least for my camera's Nikon remote control. So kind of acts as a secondary flash for a camera. Strobe function just uses the white and kind of does a strobing pattern. Whenever you turn on the strobe or fade or smooth, you gotta hit off to turn it off. The fade does a really fast fade between the 3 different LEDs. And then the smooth does a really slow fade, which is nice for ambient lighting or nice for mood lamps or what have you. Well, I hope that gets you a little further down the line of figuring out how to operate your Light Painter's palette. The code is all available on my GitHub page. My GitHub name would be JDSkier1. That's JDSKIER, the number 1. And then the folder is Light Painter's Palette. If you guys have any questions, feel free to send me a message either through Instructables, through Tindy, or through, GitHub or wherever. And I hope you like it. Thanks for watching.